Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are Anggun Guna Puspita, Rizky Rohmah, and Zakia Faradiba from Group 8. We are going to present our material about factorial design.
Definition of factorial design. Factorial design is an elaboration of a single variable experimental design which aims to allow the investigation of two or more variables, at least one of which was manipulated by the researcher. After studying independent variables using a single variable design, it is often useful to study that variable in combination with one or more other variables because some variables work differently when paired with different levels of other variables. For example, one method A instruction may be more effective for high ability students, while a different method may be more effective for low ability students. The purpose of this factorial design is to determine whether the effects of the independent variables can be generalized at all levels or whether the effects are specific to a particular level. The term factorial refers to a design that has more than one independent variable or grouping variable, also known as a factor. In the previous example, method instruction is one factor and student aptitude is another. Method instruction has two levels. There are two types of instruction. Student aptitude also has two levels, high aptitude and low aptitude. Thus, a 2 by 2 factorial design has two factors, and each other has two levels. This four-celled design is the simplest factorial design. In a 2 by 2 design, both variables may be manipulated or one may be a manipulated variable and the other a non-manipulated variable. Variables that are not manipulated are often referred to as control variable. Control variables are usually physical or mental characteristics of the participants. Example, gender, years of experience, or aptitude.
The next is the advantages of factorial design. Kotari mentions that factorial design provides equivalent accuracy with less labor and as such are a source of economy. Using factorial designs, we can determine the main effects of two or more in one single experiment. And it permits various other comparisons of interest. For example, they give information about such effects which cannot be obtained by treating one single factor at a time. The determination of interaction effects is possible in case of factorial designs. In short, factorial design accomplishes in one experiment what otherwise might require two or more separate studies, provides an opportunity to study interactions that are often very important in educational research, and provides a more powerful test of hypotheses.
And next is type of factorial experimental design. Factorial experiment can be performed within or between subjects. Mixed factorial design is also used in psychology. Mixed factorial design is a design in which there is at least one of the subject variables. And the first type of factorial experimental design is within subject factorial design. In experiment by Coden and Bedley, researchers want to study the effect of context on memory. The hypothesis that memory should be better when the conditions at test are more similar to the condition experienced during learning. To operationalize this idea, Gordon and Bedley decide to use a very particular population, deep sea divers. The divers were asked to learn a list of 50 unrelated words either on the beach or under 10 feet of water. The divers were then tested either on beach or undersea. The divers were tested in output the environment in order to make sure that any effect observed could not be attributed to a global effect on one of the environment. The first independent variable is the place of learning. It has two levels, on the pitch and undersea. The second independent variable is the place of testing. It has two levels, on the pitch and undersea. These two independent variables give for experimental condition. Number 1, learning on the pitch and recalling on the pitch. Number 2, learning on the pitch and recalling undersea. Number 3, learning undersea and recalling under pitch. Number 4, learning undersea and recalling undersea. Each subject in this experimental was tested in all 4 experimental conditions. The list of words was randomly created and assigned to each subject. The order of testing was randomized in order to control the carryover effect. The layout of the within subject factorial design is presented below. Number 2, between subject factorial design. A between subject factorial design is presented in the following table. Separate group of 6 experience each condition, thus requiring 24 subjects to get 6 response to each of 4 conditions. And here's the table. Number 3, mixed factorial design. Sometimes researchers use mixed factorial designs. There are 2 researchers. The independent variables A and B. Variables A is the variable within the subject and the variable B is the intersubjective variable. The subject either goes stroke B1 or goes stroke A1, and there is also A2, or they have experience B2 one with A1 and A2. For example, we want to study the effect of gender and alcohol on Eric's talking behavior when driving, and here we have 2 independent variables, gender A and alcohol level B. Suppose we decide to manipulate the independent variable alcohol has 4 levels of concentration. We decide to make each subject observe under each alcohol condition. Here is the table. This example shows a situation in which you would have to use mixed design. And next is limitation of factorial design. Sometimes, especially when we have more than 3 independent variables and each variable has 3 or more levels to be operated together, the experimental setup and statistical analysis become very complicated. In factor experiments, it is difficult for the experimenter to choose homogeneous group when the treatment combination or the number of treatments become larger. So from this material, we conclude that factorial design is an elaboration of the single variable experimental design which aims to allow the investigation of 2 or more variables, at least one of which was manipulated by the researcher. The purpose of this factorial design is to determine whether the effect of the independent variable can be generalized at all levels or whether the effects are specific to a particular level. Factorial design are used mainly because of the 2 advantages. The number 1 is they provide equivalent accuracy, and the second, they permit various other comparison of interest. There are 3 types of factorial design, include within subject factorial design, between subject factorial design, and mixed factorial design. Factorial design has limitation. In factor experiment, it is difficult to the experimenter to choose a homogeneous group when the treatment combination of the number of treatments become larger. Okay, that's all about factorial experimental design. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.